Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott, and I'm overjoyed to start reading from a home study course, a 48-lesson home study course that was created by Walter Russell and his wife, Lao Russell. If you get a chance, you have to listen to my episode, The Secret of Light, which is a book. It comes out to a little more than 6 hours, and it's an amazing book that talks about light and God and electricity and is beyond explanation in many ways. It's like a magic spell, and everything that he writes is amazing. Walter Russell was this amazing genius scientist, metaphysicist that explored the mind of God in a very unique way and appears to be channeling in some of his works, which he refers to as the Divine Iliad. He appears to be channeling God very much like the Joseph Benner episode, The Impersonal Life. Now, this mixed and intermingled with an understanding of physics and science, with a description of the elements and the interplay of forces, becomes this amazing thing. And these 48 lessons are designed as a way of putting in context to your own life, using meditation, and through meditation understanding God and the connection to God. And each lesson builds on itself. It talks about everything from prayer to a number of different things, and I can't wait to share it all with you. It's all part of the Reality Revolution, almost as if it was meant for us today. It fits perfectly with what we've been teaching so far. And I have taught meditation several times through a number of different courses, and I will also post my playlist on how to meditate. We've explored it through the lens of Neville Goddard and Alan Watts, and there are a variety of different explanations on meditating. And Walter Russell really goes into a scientific explanation here in this first lesson. But in this episode, we'll read some of the preface and forward from the authors that are also really amazing. There's a statement of purpose here, which will very much excite you for experiencing these 48 lessons. There's a basic foundation for a living philosophy that blows my mind as well. Home study course on universal law, natural science, and living philosophy. An important message from the authors. In these lessons, we are laying the foundations for a better understanding of God. The nature of God, the relationship of God to man and his universe, the structure of the material universe, and God's processes of creation. After you have finished reading each unit of this home study, you must begin at the beginning and read it again. No one can step into a completely new dimension of thinking and comprehend it all at once. No course of study will reward you with larger dividends from rereading than this one will. Always remember that this is new knowledge and therefore has a new language. As you read it over and over again, what you will find as we take you behind the scenes of God's cosmic stage is as profoundly simple and as fully comprehensible to you as adding 2 and 2 together. Do please take our word for this, and never for a moment say it is over your head or you cannot understand it. For you can understand it. Remember that new knowledge always seems difficult. You have to think about it over and over again, then meditate upon it until what you now read with your senses, you will gradually know in your soul. It will then become a part of you. To become a master of creative expression, by being able to make the shortcuts to achievement as we have done, you must master each step as you go, each idea as you absorb it, by going back to it time after time, until you begin to wonder why you could ever have thought any part of it was difficult. Again, we say that all of its seeming complexity will lead you to the most surprising simplicity. This is why we persist in advising that you take one paragraph at a time and meditate upon it until your soul knows what your senses have read in words and recorded upon your brain. When it goes beyond your brain into your consciousness, you will truly know it. Basic foundation for a living philosophy. To bring blessings upon yourself, bless your neighbor. To enrich yourself, enrich your neighbor. Honor your neighbor, and the world will honor you. To solely hurt yourself, hurt your neighbor. He who seeks love will find it by giving it. The measure of a man's wealth is the measure of wealth he has given. To enrich yourself with many friends, enrich your friends with yourself. That which you take away from any man, the world will take away from you. When you take the first step to give yourself to that which you want, it will also take its first step to give itself to you. Peace and happiness do not come to you from your horizon. They spread from you out to infinity beyond your horizon. The whole universe is a mirror, which reflects back to you that which you reflect into it. Love is like unto the ascent of a mountain. It comes ever nearer to you as you go ever nearer to it. God's great gifts to man are life and that which man calls death. God's universe is based upon the love which he gives to his universal body as life, and the love that his universal body re-gives to him as death for eternal reborning as life. This new way of life is based upon the balanced perfection and normalcy of the love principle of nature, which never takes but gives for the purpose of equally re-giving that which has been given. Life is the great gift of love which our Father Mother has given to all creation. And death is the great gift of love which all creation re-gives to our Father Mother for eternally resurrecting all creation into equally balanced and divided two-way life sequences forever and ever. Statement of purpose. The purpose of life is to reach the topmost pinnacle of human unfoldment. That topmost pinnacle, beyond which no man can go, is the illumination into cosmic consciousness and Christ consciousness. During all history, there have been not more than 40 humans who have acquired cosmic consciousness, and only one who has attained Christ consciousness. The purpose of these lessons is to help every seeker by illumining the path to that supreme goal, so that he can gradually become aware of his own immortal divine self. The divine spark of that light lies dormant in every human being. As long as that light does lie dormant, one is aware only of one's mortal body, which lives and dies and has physical desires one is forever satisfying. That awareness of physical existence lasts for many centuries. After primitive man emerges from the jungle and before the dawn of his consciousness begins to awaken a slight awareness of the light of his divine power. During that period, he is dominated by his body desires to such an extent that he thinks and believes that his body is his self. Out of millions of sensually dominated humans, however, one of them awakens that unquenchable divine spark which all inherits from God, and becomes an extraordinary human being with extraordinary knowledge and power. We call such extraordinary men geniuses. Genius is the first step away from the purely physical human toward the spiritual mind goal. Every genius has begun to develop God awareness in him and knows that he is mind and not body. All body-dominated human beings think outwardly through their senses. They can hear sounds with the ears of their bodies. They can see objects with physical eyes and record the memories of such sensations upon their brains. Every genius thinks inwardly toward his mind instead of outwardly toward his senses. The genius can hear sounds coming out of the silence with his inner ears. He can vision non-existent forms with his inner eye. And he can feel the rhythms of God's thinking and his knowing, which are a blank slate to the man who believes that he is his body. When a human rises to the exalted state of genius, he becomes a co-creator with God. The beginning of creative expression in man is the first evidence of the unfolding light of his genius, for no man who is purely sense-controlled can create. He can remember and repeat the records which he has imprinted upon his physical brain, but his brain has no knowledge. Therefore, he cannot create. Man can create only with his mind, and the brain is not the mind. The brain is merely the seat of sensation and the electric recorder of sensation. Humans must think outwardly through the senses in order to live and function in a sense-objective universe. But the genius who thinks inwardly toward the light of his self can vision or imagine that which spiritually exists, and can then think outwardly through his senses and cause his mentally visional image to exist physically. That is what creation is and what the genius creator does. Our first step with you is to teach you how to transform your thinking so that the genius in you will gradually appear and intensify to that high state which transforms you into the next stage of spiritual unfolding. A few great geniuses have given the world its culture in all of the arts, and the great immortals among them are the few whose works will endure as long as history endures. There have been many, however, whose works have raised the standard of world culture even though they do not stand out as being supreme in the light of their own immortality. The journey of life is long, and one must know many reincarnations to arrive at his destination in the light of all knowing. Each life, however, is another step toward that goal, and each day of life can be a greater step than the last one. When we arise from each period of sleep with a wholly regenerated body, the seed of all that has transpired in our lives unfolds within the new cycle of life to bring us still closer to the door of the immortal light. Each step upward toward that light is a glorious one, for it becomes ever nearer and is worth the effort of its attainment, while each step the other way toward the dark is ignominious and fraught with cosmic frustration, which may take many lives to overcome. Hence it is that you must go forward to attain that glory. And these lessons are for the purpose of giving you the knowledge which will make it possible for you to go forward toward the light to any extent that you desire without limitation, for man's limitations are set by himself. Cosmic knowledge can be given to others who desire to attain it only by those who have attained it. God has given that rarest of all gifts to both of us for the purpose of regenerating this decadent age by bringing the cosmic age into existence through those higher beings of earth who are ready for such knowledge. Of these, there are an increasing number who are reaching toward the light to become the seed for world regeneration. As the masses of mankind sink lower and lower toward the dark, which they are making for themselves. To one of us, God gave all knowledge of his ways, processes, and laws governing the construction of matter and electric motion, so that other men may likewise know how God builds his universe and destroys it in eternally repeated life-death cycles, and also knowledge of how the Creator divides his light waves of thinking into balanced male-female pairs of sexed opposites to continue the building of his sexed electric universe. To the other one, God gave all knowledge of the way of life which controls man's unfolding toward the light of his immortality, in order that the coming cosmic age could have a balanced living philosophy which conforms with God's ways, processes, and laws. With this new knowledge, mankind will be able to live together as a unified whole, and at long last know the peace, happiness, and prosperity which conformity with God's law of love can alone bring to warring, fear-ridden man who unknowingly defies God's law. All of our lives, we have been prepared for just this one purpose, and have known of it from the ages of 7 and 3 respectively. The details of these illuminations you will know later, inasmuch as this knowledge will be helpful to you. It is because of our being prepared for this service to the human race that we were brought together to fulfill the destiny prepared for us. God works in mysterious ways to unfold his plan, and he gives as meticulous care to the working out of your individual destiny as he does to a whole solar system or the lowliest spore of his creation. The one thing which man has not yet realized in the building of his individual or collective destiny is that God will work with him in the unfolding of his destiny, but he will not work for him. You must knowingly create yourself and your destiny with him, and in accordance with his law of balanced interchange in all transactions. To work with God knowingly, you must know God and his ways. You can know God by knowing yourself as mind instead of thinking of yourself as sensed body. The transition from sensed body awareness to God-mind awareness comes to the human race very slowly. It is the sole purpose of these lessons to know God as the one reality and his universe as a simulation of reality. Man can think only what he knows in his mind or senses through his body. Likewise, the same principles apply to nations. Men and nations become what they think. Their standards are determined by their thinking. High standards are attained through mind-determined, controlled thinking, and low standards are attained through sensed thinking. The standards of individual and national thinking have been steadily and dangerously lowering since world wars began to destroy world culture by using the wealth of the nation for destroying itself and man, instead of conserving it for the building of man. The physical world of man could disappear into another period of dark centuries, for half the world is already there, but man's spiritual world cannot disappear. The divine light in man cannot be quenched. Civilization will survive and grow toward the light only in the measure in which mankind knows the light. Our service to you, aid to the human race, is to increase the measure of your knowing in order that you may become consciously aware of your cosmic source to such an extent that you can knowingly say, I and my Father are one, and have full comprehension of its profound meaning. Walter and Lao Russell. Note: such terms as electricity and magnetism, which are used throughout this course, are used because they are the accepted terminology of today. It must be understood, however, that they are used for your better understanding only. The terminology for the New Age science and philosophy which the authors of this course are preparing makes use of other terms appropriate to their concepts, but the use of them here would confuse the student at this stage. Universal Law, Natural Science and Living Philosophy by Walter and Lao Russell. Lesson number 1. Meditation, scientifically explained. Meditation is the most important of all functions of human life which advance human progress. So little is known of it even by the greatest of the world's geniuses, who constantly practice it knowingly, but cannot explain it, that it now seems necessary to define and explain that divine function. With sufficient explanation, everyone can knowingly practice meditation, and thus knowingly command his achievement to be masterly. He can likewise command his body to be perfect, or his life to be full, to overflowing, for through meditation every man can become whatever he wishes to become. Meditation is communing with God for the purpose of working knowingly with God. Meditation means to think inwardly toward the mind-soul rather than outwardly through the senses. You will recall that Jesus told man to seek the kingdom of heaven within himself, not outside of himself. By that he meant that God dwelt within man, and that God awareness will come to any man who communes with God through inner thinking. There are but two kinds of thinkers in the world: those who think outwardly through the brain, and those who think inwardly toward the soul. Outward thinking develops the physical qualities and desires of men, while inward thinking unfolds the spiritual qualities which await unfoldment for long ages of man's slow journey to the light of his own divinity. Working knowingly with God. You all know that is the way we both work, and because of it, we have been able to do 10 times the amount of work we otherwise would have done, and all of it in a masterly manner. When we know that God's mind and ours are one, and we are consciously aware of his presence every working moment, our work could not be other than masterly. To work knowingly with God constantly, never ceasing, is to be inspired constantly with the ecstasy of his nature. We have both felt that way since we were children. God was our teacher. We needed no other. He was always with us as soul and lifted us to great heights, even in our early days. All during our lives we have walked and talked and worked knowingly with God. We'd always dimly known the years ahead for us, and we were both so clearly conscious of each other's presence that we consciously searched for each other, each knowing that neither could serve mankind without the other, knowing that we must demonstrate by our own lives that which we must teach to other men. Our one desire through life has been to live life worthily, to manifest the power which God gives to every man for the asking, and to immunize ourselves from all that is unlovely in order that we could forever create with him that beauty of balanced rhythmic thinking which is his universe. That is the reason why we both must now write down our teachings in this manner, so that they will always be with you, all who seek the zero of stillness, in near places and far beyond, where we could ourselves ever go. The first step. To meditate with God, first forget your body and stop thinking about anything. Decentrate to the zero of stillness. Become a vacuum insofar as your senses are concerned. Desire the light. If you could express it in words, let that expression have a meaning, but without words. Let it be more like a realization, as though you said in these words, "The glory of thy anointing light is upon me. I am in the Spirit. Thy light is all about me. It encompasseth me. It shineth through me. I am dissolved in thy light. Thy light is my light. I am immersed in my light. I am in thy light, knowing thy light. Be thou me, that I may not be myself alone." You will at first find it hard to stop thinking. The harder you try to stop thinking, the more actively you will think. We, therefore, tell you how to stop thinking by substituting the ecstasy of knowing. First, then, fill your whole soul with desire for that ecstasy, which is the perpetual state of the God mind. Remember that ecstasy is that perpetual, universal state of the Creator's mind, and desire that it shall become your state of mind. You will first feel a growing state of inner joyousness, which comes from the peace and stillness of complete bodily relaxation. That state of inner joyousness will gradually become a permanent characteristic of your nature, and you will then find it as impossible for you to express such unbalanced emotions as fear, anger, discouragement, inferiority, envy, or jealousy as it would be for God to have such emotions. As that state of inner joyousness comes to you, all of your physical and mental ailments will be driven out of you, for all of them are the result of unbalanced emotional thinking, which develops toxins in your body and mental disturbances in your mind. The utter relaxation from all mental and physical strains, which comes from stopping your thinking and replacing it with desire for just one thing, inner joyousness, will immediately begin to cure of any body ailment or mental disturbance. To strongly develop this mental state, which leads to the godly ecstatic state, is to insulate your body and mind from any ailment whatsoever which you yourself caused, and to protect you from infection from outer sources. Secondly, after acquiring the mental state of inner joyousness or ecstasy, formulate a desire for a specific thing, the problem of life which now faces you, or a concept which you wish to create. In other words, give form to your desire. That is talking with God about it. That is real prayer. You have placed yourself in the God condition of mind. So you are now able to talk to God about your creations, which are likewise God's creations, when you know He is working with you. Meditation defined. Meditation is the desire of man to know God in him and to manifest his God awareness by extending his knowing through his thinking to the production of material bodies created by him in the image of his inspired conceiving. We might put it more simply by saying that meditation is a desire to be alone with God, to talk with him. Meditation is really a conference between your soul and the universal soul. To be one with God means to desire his knowledge and power. God's mind is your mind. Hence, you have all knowledge and power that God has to the extent of your awareness of God in you and the measure of your comprehension of your unity with him. If God's knowledge is asleep in you, it must be awakened in order that you may be aware of it. When you are aware of it, you can use it in the measure of your ability to comprehend it. The entirety of universal law works with you at your command, to the extent of your awareness and understanding, and to the extent only you may use universal power to think your knowing into material forms. Your knowing is your mind self. Your mind self is you, the eternal being. Your self is not your body, nor is your knowing in your brain, but your knowing controls your body and your brain as their absolute master. Do not confuse your mind and brain as one. Your mind thinks through your brain and with it, as a lever works upon its fulcrum, for your brain is but the instrument for fulfilling the commands extended to it by consciousness. Which mind is, your brain records memories, experiences, and information electrically, just as phonographs likewise do. But it is the will of your mind which orders your body to obey through electric messages from your brain, just as it likewise orders your automobile to obey. The nerves of your body are the wires of the electric machine, which your body is. The brain is but a nerve recorder and distributor. The measure of your cosmic knowing is the measure of your God awareness. It is the measure of your ability to dwell in the light of all-knowing and to command the thought universe of creation with God. You are then a co-creator with God. Thinking what you know into imagined forms is expressing your eternal self in the invisible universe of mind. Giving formed bodies to imagined thought forms by following up your thoughts with actions is expressing your eternal self in the visible universe of matter. This is all that God does, for He controls His electric body as its absolute master. He keeps all of its interactions and interchanging in absolute balance, for God is eternally creating His body in the image of His desiring. You can do likewise, if you desire to, by working knowingly with God. You can be master of your body in the measure of your awareness of God's power in you. You must remain in balance instead of continually unbalancing your thoughts and body action in divers ways from morn until night and from night until morn. Tensions and strains, fears and worryings, and various emotions destroy your body by the accumulation of toxins. You will continually pay the price of your wrong actions until you ultimately learn that whatever you know, you think, and what you think, you become. Creating bodies. This brings us to a point where much confusion exists regarding mind and matter. We must make this relationship so clear that the confusion will dissolve in your understanding. Mind is spiritual and constitutes the invisible universe of cause. Matter is physical and constitutes the visible universe of effect. God's mind has but one idea. That idea is creation as a whole. God has but one desire. That desire is to give creative expression to His one whole idea. God expresses His desire dynamically by thinking and imagining. God is the universal soul. God's thinking and imagining create a body to manifest His soul. That body is the light wave universe as a whole. It is God's one idea divided by His thinking and imagining into countless millions of units of ideas, each having a different formed body, but all manifesting the one by being extensions of each other. There is naught else in all of this vast universe but moving bodies extending from the stillness of the cosmic light of soul, which centers thinking, mind of God and man. All formed bodies are made in the image of God and man and extended from mind imaginings to manifest God and man. How simple it really is when you think of it that way. Creator and creation being just mind-imagined forms, dynamically extended into light spectrum formed bodies fashioned in the images of their imaginers. How much more simple is it to think of all the universe as one mind, one soul, and one body, seemingly divided into many minds, many souls, and many bodies. You must really learn to think of God and God's body that way before you can fully understand the oneness of all things. When you do learn to think of it that way, you will then know that there are not two separate or separable things in the universe. Likewise, you will fully understand that you are the center of the universe, for all things in it extend from you, and all things are extensions of each other and of the one. Therefore, all things center all things, and each is the center of the entire universe. How glorious and wonderful is the realization that mind of man and mind of God can know their oneness in meditation, in order that the creation of man can have balanced rhythms, the symmetry and stability of God's creations. All that God does is to think thought forms of ideas and give them formed bodies from His body and soul of His soul. God thinks man, and the body of man appears in the image of God's imagining. In the same manner, the bodies of roses and oaks of the forest, ants and lizards, elephants and camels, planets, suns and oceans, with their living host of swimming things, and countless other formed bodies appear as separate ideas, all extended from the one and all from each other. And that is all that man does. He also thinks thought forms of ideas and gives them formed bodies from the universal body and soul from the universal soul. The engineer conceives the image of a bridge, and the formed body of the bridge appears in the image of the engineer's imagining. Likewise, the musician thinks music in the silence of his imagining, and behold, the formed body of the music appears in sound extending from the silence. And so are you and all men, thinking imaged forms of multiple things and giving them formed bodies in the image of your imaginings. Awaken your own genius. Whatever the greatest genius in the world can do, you can also do. You have the same inheritance that he has. The only reason you have not given evidence of it is because you have not yet been aware of it. In other words, you have not yet discovered yourself. That divine spark of genius which is a flame in him is dim in you. You can illumine yourself by inspiration and deep meditation. The greatest miracle that can happen to you is that wonderful discovery of yourself. The divine power which lies within yourself and the awakening of unlimited knowledge which you unknowingly now have. One of the reasons you have not yet made that marvelous discovery is because meditation is still new to the Western races. It is slowly being discovered by men, one by one, as each one begins to hear that inner voice of the Spirit, which is forever calling within the souls of all men. When you are too busy with material things to have time to listen to that voice, you become chained to emotions of your body and to the demands of material things. You are enslaved by them. The moment you begin to listen to your inner voice, that moment you become freed from slavery to the body. The high heavens of God's omnipotent and omniscient universe then become your dwelling place. Meditation began when thinking began at the dawn of consciousness in the human race. That was but a few thousand years ago. Until that time, men were ruled by their senses and their instincts. As soon as humans began to think and know, they began to suspect a superior being. Worship then began, sun worship, idol worship, and finally the inner voice of thinking man led him to the spiritual idea of many gods, then to one God. Through the centuries of meditation or communion between the physical senses of men and their spiritual inspiration, the genius of some unfolded beyond others. This gradual unfolding has been taking place during several ages of man, until now a new stage of the human race is unfolding, which is the dawn of the cosmic age. The great masses of mankind are not yet ready for cosmic knowing, but many thousands are ready for this new knowledge of the invisible universe of thinking mind. It may be that there are even a few million who are ready to become the seed of the new race of cosmic man. The test for ascertaining the average number of those who are ready for this higher step upward in the unfolding of the man idea is not a religious one, it is a cultural one. In New York City, for instance, about 25,000 out of 8 million people seek the higher inspirational rhythmic creations of the world's great geniuses who interpret the heartbeat of nature for the souls of men. These same few shun noisy crowds, shudder at jazz music which distresses them acutely, and seek aloneness in the forest or ocean shores where they can hear nature's silent whisperings and rhythmic sounds within their very souls. To the rest of the 8 million, the silent whisperings of nature have no meaning whatsoever other than boredom. If these be found at ocean shores, it will be where boardwalks and blatant noises vibrate the senses of their bodies pleasantly for the excitement of their senses. These still live sensed existences with body awareness controlling their lives. The dawn of consciousness has not yet illumined them with the light which still awaits their soul's awakening. The dawn of the cosmic age. Those illumined ones who are now ready to open the doors of their souls far wider for the light to illumine them further will uplift the whole human race to higher standards. Out of that whole, there will always come an average few until the cosmic age will be strong with growing numbers of the more and more illumined. These are the Illuminati who forever unfold the spiritual nature of the human race. Knowing, conceiving, thinking idea. Creation is an idea of God. Love is the one whole idea. That one whole idea constitutes what God knows. God thinks the one idea into countless parts of countless forms. Thus, God's thinking takes God's knowing apart into seeming separate ideas, each of which is given its separate form. That is exactly what you do. You may have all of God's knowing if you become fully illumined, but in each communion with God, you get a little more each time your soul touches the universal soul. You then take it apart and think it into objective form. That is what constitutes God's creation, or yours. You always get that which you ask for if you ask for it with your soul instead of your senses. If you ask in words alone, you will not receive what you ask for, because you have not asked God for it. You have but asked your senses for it. When, however, you have actually written your desire into your heartbeat, as we have automatically done all our lives from moment to moment, you unfailingly acquire the knowledge you ask for. It comes to you in a timeless flash in the rhythmic language of light which God uses to talk to his children. Having thus acquired that part of the one whole idea which you have asked for in your heart, you then think it into the form of a concept by imagining it into a form. This conceptual form may be misty or nebulous at first. Do not act upon it while it is still nebulous. Decentrate to the zero of the light over and over again. Then concentrate. Each time you concentrate, you more clearly see the image of it in your inspired imaginings. While it is still in embryo, do not give it birth into the objective universe of form and motion. Dwell on it until it becomes clear to your outer vision. If it is an invention, meditate upon it until you clearly see it. Do not waste time experimenting. See the embryo of it completed mentally before you spend time on it physically. Otherwise, it will be immature, just as a child's body is immature if born in embryo. If it is a sail, assemble all of the elements of the sail together until you can vision its consummation clearly before approaching your client. If it is a motive for symphony, hear it completely in the silence of your soul before you give it a body. No matter what you desire, take it to God for a spiritual form before you give it a physical one. Create it invisibly before you create it visibly. Get into the fixed habit of seeking that zero of stillness in the light before starting to think or act. When you finally act, give your concept a physical form. Keep your soul attuned to the universal soul. Hold fast to that ecstasy of inner joyousness which comes from working knowingly with God. Your creation will be finished in much less time, and you will know no fatigue. Let this paragraph become a part of you by meditating upon it endlessly. Talk to God constantly in his wordless rhythmic language of light. The moment you find yourself working alone with your own ego, stop working for the emotions of your sensed body are making you aware of it, and your work will not be enduring without the light of your soul in it. Physical emotions immediately smother spiritual inspirations. Taking idea apart. You can know an idea timelessly, all of it, but to think it into objective form is to take it apart for extension into the three-dimensional universe of time and space. To thus think it, you divide and multiply it into many conditioned material forms and set them in motion to become a part of the physical universe of multi-conditioned moving forms. This creative process requires a technique, but knowledge and inspiration require no technique. Always remember that God is creating his universe by giving body forms to mind-imagined forms. Likewise, you are creating your universe by giving objective body forms to your imagined forms. You must, however, conceive the idea for those forms before you begin to build them into your imaginings. Then you must imagine them fully before giving birth to them objectively. When your imagined idea is sufficiently clear, then start creating it, whether you know its technique or not. Learn the technique of it in the doing of it. A technique is something your body acquires, and anyone can acquire any technique, but knowledge and inspiration you do not acquire. You always have that. All you need to do is to awaken it, and to awaken it, all you need is desire to awaken it. The moment you have the desire and let God know of it, you will then begin to know that glorious language of the light, which you yourself are. Inspiration will then come to you, and in the inspiration your desire is being fulfilled with the knowing which that inspiration is. The language of light is wordless, but in it is the essence of intelligence. You yourself can put intelligence into words, for words are but a technique. Likewise, whatever form you wish to give it, you yourself can translate the essence of that divine language of light into form through any medium by acquiring the technique of that medium. That is something which your body does by acting solely with your will. Through your will, you command your body to express your desire. Your body is but an automatic machine which must be manipulated by your will. It must be trained by your will to fulfill every technique of expression, and it may take years to so train your body to automatically obey your will. That is why it takes years of practice for a body to become a perfect musical instrument, or an instrument which paints, writes, or sculpts with tools which are but extensions of the body. Conception of idea is recorded as seed of idea. Your conception of an idea has the same relation to the idea as the seed of an oak has to the full-grown oak. Your imagining is recorded in your very soul, and from the stillness of your soul the idea extends into form, just as the form of the oak extends from the stillness of its formless seed. The inner joyousness of conceiving an idea and imagining its form and purpose is as uplifting as the created extensions of it are, and it is purposeful even if it but uplifts you alone. To be purposeful for the world, however, you must give your inspired imaginings a formed body which responds to the senses of man. It is through this action-reaction of giving your creation a material body that you make it a masterpiece. Extending your soul into it by moment-to-moment communion with God is the way you give love to your creation. If you do not extend love from your soul to your creation, you do not give it life. Not having life or love given to it, it cannot re-give life or love to inspire others. It is already dead and soon will be buried in the trash basket of dead things. A masterpiece of any product whatsoever is that to which the life and love of the Creator's soul has been extended to it through your soul for re-extension to other men by re-inspiring them with your immortality. Above all, remember moment by moment that your body is an extension of you. If you give it love, it will re-give love. If you make it of it a surly, grievous, unbalanced thing, it will extend to others what you extend to it. Stop right here and give deep thought to this idea. Then come back to it often and give more and more thought to it until you become meticulously careful as to what thoughts you are going to allow passing through your body, lest you make your body ill and driving others away from you by your repellent thoughts and repellent body. The glory of the unseen and unheard. This is an indescribable glory. All along the road which leads from your active thinking to the stillness of deep meditation. If you cannot actually go to the forest or sea, the better to commune with God, go there in your imagination. If some problem demands your thoughts, let the imagined tones of the sea drown them out. If you imagine the sea and hear the rhythms of its waves pounding upon the shores as echoes of the heartbeat of the universe resounding within you, or if you hear the breezes whispering in the pines with your inner ears, the glory of that ecstasy will soon drown out dross thoughts of the earth. Meditation transports you from the world of sensing the motion of things materially to imagining them cosmically. It transports you from the world of blatant sounds which sear the senses to the world of rhythmic silences, which is without body, to the world of the soul and the seed of things unborn which await their birth through you. The world of your imaginings is your escape from emotions, with its tensions and nervous strain to the ecstasy of your soul's high heaven. It is the cosmic way of restoring balance. Earth music is melodic and chains you to the earth. The music of the spheres which you hear with inner ears is deeply tonal, not melodic. The rhythms and tones of nature's music, which sing its octaves in the language of light, have always been within them, the pulsing rhythms of the universal heartbeat. Always the 1-2, 1-2 pulsing of the father-mother heartbeat of reborning forms of things which manifest the father-mother pulsing rhythms of the soul's high heavens. Always, in your deep meditation, the music of the silences, from which sounds of earth spring, is like unto the aftermath of the great symphonies by cosmic masters, which have refolded from sounds of earth that your ears have heard into your very soul, which still hears them in the pulse beat of your imagining. Never will you hear the 1-2-3 of waltz rhythm in the soul's high heavens, for that syncopation brings you quickly back to earth and to awareness of your body emotions and its senses. That 1-2-3 rhythm makes you want to dance, and that is good, for it gives physical happiness to those whose desires are so deeply rooted to the senses of earth that their deep appeal is the deeper syncopation of jazz. The silences of the high heavens are but a deep void, and as though they were not, jazz music splits the rhythms of nature into such unbalanced rhythms that he who listens severs his soul from the universal soul. Even of such a one, it may not be said that he is without soul. It may be said of him only that the light of his soul is dimmed or sleeping, and he himself can awaken it if he but listens long enough and often enough to the rhythms of the soul's high heavens to awaken recognition of the light which is within all men. The story is told that Diamond Jim Brady thus awakened his sleeping inner self quite accidentally. He bought an automatic piano and many jazz and foxtrot records for his worldly friends, and ordered many classic records for his highbrow friends, or whom he had many. While playing these classic records, he recognized within him the glory of the universal heartbeat rhythms. It is said that he listened to those records alone for hours until he became completely transformed culturally. We are in no way suggesting to you that you should not listen to the music which excites your body emotions, for they are good when properly divided between rhythms of earth and rhythms of heaven, such as the 1-2-3 of the rhythmic waltz. We need to live gloriously on earth as well as in the high heavens, but to live the rhythms of earth alone is to be but clay of earth, chained to earth as slave of earth, never soaring into the high heavens of the light of immortality. Mortality is a prison cell from which you can escape only upon the wings of your immortality. And that concludes lesson 1 of the home study course written by Walter and Lao Russell on universal law, natural science, and living philosophy, Meditation Scientifically Explained. Walter Russell has a Shakespearean way of writing. You can pull beautiful lines out of this. I found myself copying and pasting stuff in the middle of reading this and posting it because some of the paragraphs in here are so profound. You find yourself stopping and looking back. And this is a beautiful description of meditation. It really is. Relaxing the body, going into the vacuum, to the void, to the still point. And then from there, you begin to create. You move into the light. At the beginning, you desire the light, and you go beyond words of it, and you find the glory of that light, and you stop thinking, and you actively stop thinking, and you go into this ecstasy of knowing. You feel your whole desire, and there's just something wonderful about this. I will definitely create meditations around this first lesson, this idea for inner joyousness. And seeking it and desiring it, just focusing on that inner joyousness, it begins to cure your body of any ailment or mental disturbance. And I really love the meditation definition that he gives, that meditation is a conference between your soul and the universal soul. It is the desire of man to know God in him and to manifest his God awareness by extending his knowing through his thinking to the production of material bodies created by him and in the image of his inspired conceiving. It really does feel like, as Walter and Lao Russell explain in the early prelude to this, that they came together for a reason. They both filled in a perfect half. It's like they're twin flames or something. You can definitely feel like this was written by one person, and you can see both voices flowing through this. And it is very beautiful and powerful teaching on meditation and an understanding of the soul and the mind and the difference between your brain and your mind. These are important discussions. And so it's a great starting point. It's very exciting as we go further. We've learned in the book, The Secret of Light, this idea of light. The thing I was left with after reading that book was, how do I apply this? The Secret of Light is a beautiful book. It feels like a magical spell, but it's an example of how light works. But I just had this yearning, like, how can I apply this and actually use these concepts to create my reality? Well, this is how he did it, and he describes it in this book, and I really enjoyed reading it, and it was a lot of fun, and can't wait to read more of it. I think this really goes deep on a lot of different levels, and there's so many different lessons from this. So keep an eye out for future lessons from Walter and Lao Russell, and I'd love to get your comments and what you think, and if you're cool with me continuing going through some of these lessons, because oftentimes when I do lessons, less and less people watch them as we go along. And so if it's popular, then I'll continue to doing it, but I really enjoy reading it. And so I'd love to know what you think about meditation in the way that Walter Russell describes it. All episodes of The Reality Revolution can be found at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.